living under the threat of rockets constantly change the way you menu plan and grocery shop?
I say life in Israel is a contact sport.
The moment you said Hersh's funeral, tears sprung to your eyes.
Shit, this is all mine, and I'm gonna have to stand behind it. Such an old Jewish bubby in my soul.
Today's guest joins me in studio all the way from Tel Aviv, where she has innovated an American approach to Middle Eastern cuisine through her best-selling cookbooks, digital demos, and culinary collabs. A prolific writer of letters, essays, and co-author of over a dozen cookbooks, she brings the joy of food to life through narrative, ritual, and memory. She met her husband on a blind date, lived in a rental house with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen, and has a brand new cookbook out with 100 recipes in it, most of which are only 10 ingredients or less. The only thing sus about her is her last name. Please welcome the delightful Adeena Sussman.
Hello.
Adeena, welcome back to the States. Welcome back to California.
So good to be in my home state.
I know, but you're a NorCal gal.
I am. Palo Alto, but, we love our Angelinos. Thank you.
Appreciate that. How is Israel these days? How is life going for you over there?
People are living, There's a little more joy back in the streets since the hostages came home, both living and, those who died or were killed and were in Gaza and are now back. Mm-hmm. And, I think there's always Israelis are really good at focusing on the present and living in the moment, and the streets are bustling, people are doing their thing, but there's always the specter of something going on. So, now people are thinking about Iran, talking about Iran, wondering what's going to happen with Iran. But I think also I certainly have learned in the last decade that I personally do not have control over the situation.
Right.
And I think people there are aware of that too. So they're going about their lives and being with their families and friends, working, traveling, and doing all the things that everybody does.
It's different in the States where we basically start our election cycles years in advance. But you guys have an election this year there. Is it already on people's minds, or it's different in Israel? Like you said, they live in the present. Maybe they don't think about it till they have to show up.
Oh, no. People are talking about it. I mean, even when there isn't an election on the books, people are talking about it. Because, because we're in a parliamentary system, the government could fall at any time.
Right.
So, there are always behind the scenes machinations about who could pair with who would be, who would be allied, what the allegiances are. It's not clear yet when the elections will be this year. Could be earlier or later in the year, but everyone's always just wondering what's going to happen.
How does that work? Can you explain that to me? What does that mean? We don't know when they are.
Well, Netanyahu gets to decide when elections are called.
But they have to occur every certain number of years, even if they don't
have to
call
occur,
their own.
I believe, in October.
Okay,
but
so
he
that's
could,
in theory,
call them earlier. And it's all about strategy. Like all politicians, people
when's the optimal moment?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so speaking about the Israeli and American of it all. You've been in Israel now 8 years?
More like 10.
More like 10.
Yeah.
Are you Israeli? Do you feel Israeli?
I do. I always say I'm like an insider, outsider in a culinary culture. And I think, and in the culture in general,
Right.
After living there for the better part of 10 years, I would say that I've learned to embrace my immigrant status without trying to prove how Israeli I am. I love the place that I live. I love my adopted country. It's been a part of my life basically since I was born. And I think in a lot of ways I do. I feel like an American Israeli.
How are you treated?
I'm treated really well.
Yeah?
I think, yeah.
An Israeli, or are you treated like an American? Amerikai?
I mean, my Hebrew accent, I'd say in the last year alone, my Hebrew has gotten a lot better because I lost my self-consciousness about it. And I think Israelis just if you try to speak Hebrew, although chances are they're going to respond to you in English anyway, because most Israelis speak English. But do I feel Israel? I feel really connected to the place. I feel really committed to the place. I feel, especially in the last 2.5 years, I feel a mission to support the place. And so, yeah, I feel really Israeli.
Beautiful.
And American.
Right, which you are.
Yeah.
It's a little bit calmer now, obviously, but over the past couple years, does living under the threat of rockets constantly change the way you menu plan and grocery shop?
I mean, it's funny because I always joke that Americans, spontaneity is scheduled like 3 weeks in advance in your Outlook calendar. It's like, let's be spontaneous next month. And in Israel, life in general is very on the fly, in the moment.
Right.
And that's kind of, I always have things around to eat. And when people stop by, we live in the Carmel market area, and constantly people are like, hey, we're downstairs. Can we pop up? And, I am a cook, so people do expect a snack.
Do they?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or you're like, I'm doing the laundry, and they're like,
no excuses for Sussman.
Wow.
No, there's always got to be something in the fridge. And there always honestly is, because I'm usually either developing recipes for cookbooks or filming for social media or
Right.
cooking for my family. So yeah, I mean, and then as far as how do we live under the specter of rockets? It's really I think it's really jarring the first few times it happens. Like there'll be a siren or an alarm. Everyone's really good at getting organized, getting into their place. And then the minute it's over, it's definitely not an LA vibe of let's process this together.
we got to go back to this meeting.
It's like, I got to get on with what I'm doing.
Yeah. My lunch is getting cold.
Yeah. And it can be, I think that is something that took a little bit of getting used to, but I would say I've definitely gone to the other side now.
Yeah. And it's fully authentic. Like,
yeah,
or is there a little still fake it till you make it?
I think it's functional compartmentalizing. I think that's what a lot of Israelis are really good at. And it's actually, you have to make sure to remain in touch with your feelings and what's going on, so that, that you're not, overloading all of a sudden, because there's a lot going on all the time. I mean, I live a 6-minute walk from where the missiles landed in June, and, I'll forget, and then I'll just be walking to meet a friend at a cafe, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, that happened. I was actually not there in June, but I came back.
Not in the country?
I was not. I was in the United States at the time.
Good.
And I was also in the United States on October 7th.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So many of my guests on this show were in Israel on October 7th.
I know. Well, it was the Jewish holiday.
It was Sukkot.
time.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of the book tour for my Shabbat cookbook.
Right.
Which changed a ton. Obviously, it was supposed to be this celebration of Shabbat cooking and Jewish joy, and it turned into dozens of group therapy sessions for me and for the audiences, where I was trying to comfort them. They were comforting me. We didn't not talk about food. We didn't not talk about the book, but it was definitely the specter of what was going on was certainly present. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It really was.
I'm assuming you didn't cancel any dates.
I thought other people would cancel.
The audiences still showed up.
Actually, the audiences grew.
Wow.
It was, people wanted to be in community. People wanted to be together. 3 days after October 7th, I was supposed to have my first event as part of the New York Wine and Food Festival. We turned it into a fundraiser for Hatzalah.
Wow.
And it was me and Chani Applebaum, a kosher chef. Her name is Busy in Brooklyn.
Nice.
And people really came out to support. And then another few days later, myself, Nama Shefi from the Jewish Food Society, Rachel Simons from Seed and Mill Tahina, and a bunch of other Jewish and influencers and chefs, Jake Cohen, Ben Gingy, Bread's Bakery, tons of people. We all came together to do a bake sale that raised over $30,000 for causes. And then I started all my events again. My first event was in Boston. The week before, there were 250 people registered, and all of a sudden there were 450 people.
Wow.
So that was kind of the effect that it had.
That's so interesting.
And it was amazing, honestly.
The word used, the specter of hanging over. Was addressing that you driven when you were in these settings, or was it the audience driven?
I was kind of trying to feel the vibes in the room and see, when you speak a lot and you're out in the Jewish community. And by the way, a lot of non-Jewish people came out to support as well. I have a lot of followers and cooks who make my food, and there were lots of other people in the mix as well. And, I think it was sometimes, what did I need that day? And how did I want to show up? And if I was feeling sad or vulnerable, I would share that. And if I was feeling a little stronger, that would also come out, I think, in the mix. People, no questions were off limits, and there were lots of cooking demos, and there were moments where I was able to escape into the pure joy of cooking, which I think were just so useful and necessary. And
Totally.
I think that is something that cooking can accomplish for anyone at any time, and that's one of the reasons that I love what I do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We should all be so lucky. You You mentioned that you have this like insider outsider sort of status. When does that duality feel like a gift, and when does it make you feel sort of like an outsider?
I have like a journalism background and a real curiosity about things. And I grew up going to Israel, and I spent a gap year in Israel between high school and college. I lived in Israel for 5 years after college before I moved to New York to pursue my culinary career. And so it's not like when I made Aliyah, I was, everyone said, "Oh, you're so brave to move to another country." I spoke the language. I knew the culture. I had friends. I had already been writing about Israeli food and wine. But there were those moments, when, I was trying to deal with immigration papers or language barriers or the healthcare system or whatever, when I definitely was like, oh, you still have, the learning curve is still steep here.
Sure.
And, obviously sometimes feeling homesick, but also just feeling really embraced, especially by the Carmel market where I moved, and by my, I got married at age 45. So I met Jay later. And became a grandma at 46. We called it the single to softa plan.
Nice.
Skipped having my own kids, but I have 2 great grown stepkids, and now I have 2 grandchildren, ages 7 and 4. And so, all those, I was really quickly immersed into local culture through my family and also through my work, and just getting out into the market every day, talking to people, asking a lot of questions. And what I always tell new immigrants to Israel is, don't try and hide where you're from. Like, it's an asset. Like, show people that you're new here and that you're interested in what they're about. And like, how could people not be happy that you've decided that you want to make your home in this new place? And that's how I kind of approach it. And I just ask a lot of questions in the shuk, and, anything I don't know, I try and learn by asking without pretending like I understand more than I do.
Did you very specifically move to Carmel Market, or just sort of lucked out that way?
I think Jay realized that I'd be much happier, much faster if I was like in the market, because I always love being near the food and the markets.
Sure.
And he loved that area as well. And it definitely was like the right move. We still live there 10 years later. I mean, you see our apartment there are pictures of my apartment.
I've been to your apartment.
Yes, you have.
Mm-hmm.
So how many years ago was that already?
That was April of 23. So
oh my
about 3 years
gosh.
ago.
Wow. Yeah. So you see where we live. We're really right there.
Yeah.
That 30-second walk from a side entrance to the market. It's the beating culinary heart of like Tel Aviv. And it's just great I always say I need to touch the shuk every day, whether I'm shopping, just saying hi to my vendors, using it as a way to walk to other parts of the city. The Carmel market and the Yemenite quarter where I live used to be really considered South Tel Aviv, and it's really now South Central Tel Aviv. Like the whole city's focus has moved southward as well, also as Jaffa has developed. And so it's really an area where people love to be, and the beach, obviously.
What do you wish people understood about the everyday human side of life in Israel?
That's a really good question. I think that it's a very community-focused place. I think it's a place where you feel safe when you walk around in the streets, which is a very crazy thing to say. I think it's a very intense and loving place. And it's a very, like I say, life in Israel is a contact sport. There's people are upfront and direct.
Yeah.
And you got to be there too. But on the other hand, I also have my ways of just like, I'm that person, like if the metaphor is like, if I'm driving on the highway, I let people drive around me. I don't need to speed up to meet everybody all the time. Sometimes you just got to like lay back and let everyone do what they need to do. And I would just say it's a really diverse place.
Sure.
Religiously, culturally, there are people of all colors from all over the world. And, the shuk itself it's really an interesting example. Until I moved into the Carmel market, I didn't realize how many people of other religions worked there. Many people who work in the shuk are Muslim. And on Muslim holidays, the shuk is a lot emptier because some of the stalls are closed. A lot of the people who deliver and bring the food to the shuk are not working. And the shuk itself is kind of an object lesson in different religious calendars in Israel. You'll know, so you'll say, oh, how come they're not there today? Oh, well, it's iftar.
Right.
It's this day of Ramadan. And you're like, oh. And then also, there are a lot of people from Eritrea and Sudan, and some of the Eritreans are Coptic and and Ethiopians are Coptic Christians, and so they'll have a charcoal cross on their forehead if it's a Christian holiday, and that reminds you also that all the religions are living in the shuk, and also just I'd say tahina is a great example. Like most of the tahina in Israel is made by Palestinians and bought by Jews, and there are like lots of examples of all this like cultural and culinary coexistence that happen every day, and commercial coexistence that just happen a lot.
You're a writer. I mean, you were a writer first.
I was,
right?
Yeah.
What drew you to cookbooks as a literary medium? I know I've saw you wrote that you read them like novels.
Your first place you're turning to for a recipe is the internet or chat or something like that. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go find a risotto recipe online, but I feel like a risotto recipe is so much richer if you understand its cultural and culinary context. Who made the recipe? What's the story behind it? What are all those little like granular details about how they make it and how they arrived at that recipe? And to me, those are things that can be told and expressed in a cookbook. And for me, a cookbook is just like any great book. It has a narrative arc. It has, my Sababa cookbook, which came out in 2019, is the story of my immersion into Israel through a culinary lens. And I open the book in the shuk, just me, like, and truly this happened like many mornings. Like I would be the actual first person in the Carmel market.
How early in the morning is that?
Not that early.
I'm surprised.
Tel Aviv is like a later city. Jerusalem, if you go to the Machane Yehuda market, Jerusalem's a religious city, so people are going to pray and then going to work. Tel Aviv, people
they're sleeping in. They were out last night.
Or just, it's people are taking it slower. They work a little bit later as well. So I think it was maybe even like 6:45 or 7, and I just showed up one of my first days living in the area, and I was like, I'm ready to shop, I'm ready to eat, and it was just me, and the asphalt right there. So those are stories that I tell in the book, and I think I really can bring the place to life, and then I think it makes the recipes and the understanding of them deeper and more delicious. And that was always my experience. Like on Shabbat, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, and everyone else was a napper and I wasn't. So when I would read everything else that was available to me, I started opening up cookbooks and reading them. And I was very early on entranced by like what I saw in the books. And, eventually I learned that writing cookbooks, once I eventually had both a culinary background and a writing background. And I realized this light bulb went off that maybe I could make a career out of like working at the intersection of those two things and working in cookbooks. That was like, oh my God, if I could only dream, and like the dream somehow came true.
What draws you to writing about food?
The way that I approach food is really steeped in my Jewish background. Like we are learners and readers and
people of the book. And that certainly was true in my house. And I always say that when I'm writing cookbooks, especially, I'm trying to create what I call forever recipes, something that you're going to turn to again and again. And it's like going to become your story. But I need to sort of like lay out the premise for why this recipe is worth your time and put it in, like, make it worthwhile for you. And like the writing is the pitch. That's the sell. That's the story. That's the way that I get you hooked in. If you just look at a combination of 15 ingredients on the page, unless you are like a really seasoned cook, you're not going to know necessarily. You can't cycle through and say that's going to be amazing. But if I tell you that my mother's potato kugel that she learned from her mother-in-law, my grandma Mildred, if I tell you that it has an amazing story about how my grandmother finally got an engagement ring on her 25th anniversary, that's going to make you want that kugel even more. These are recipes that have family stories and my stories. And I think what I'm trying to do is encourage you to then make it and then add your own story to it. I wonder if there's people like cooking that dish and they're like, yeah, I got this from Adeena's, mom's mother-in-law.
Totally. Totally. It's amazing to me, when they say, oh, I love that story about your grandma Mildred. And, if for me, that is so special that I'm carrying on her legacy. And,
pretty cool.
Yeah. Like her whole life was about shepping nachas for us. And now like I'm shepping nachas that Grandma Mildred's recipes are in there, and she was a great cook, but my mother's mother hated to cook. And I talk about that too. It's not like I grew up in this environment where everyone was just this, warm and fuzzy bubby who was cooking all the time. My mother's mother was like a child of the Depression and was pulled out of school at age 12 to sort of be like a Cinderella for her family cooking and cleaning. And so my mom didn't grow up in a house where food was valued, and cooking was considered this like amazing connective experience. And she had to learn that when she got married. So I'm so glad that she did, because she really passed that along to us.
So nice.
Myself and my sister. Yeah.
You also are a prolific writer on your own Substack.
I try.
When and why did you start doing that?
I think I wanted to go deeper on certain subjects. I mean, even especially during the war, I'd say, you know, I had a post on Substack that went viral. I didn't even realize that was a thing when I started writing Substack.
Which one?
It was after I went to Hersh Goldberg-Polin's funeral. And you can't express those things the same way on an Instagram post.
Of course.
So it just, excuse me?
No, please. What's coming up for you right now?
No, just to have the ability to tell stories deeply and to have a place where you can write at any length that you want, and people are coming because they want to read that. And that was just a time when I really felt like I had something I wanted to say and share an experience with people. And so I think both those, and also just a chance for me to post more holiday recipes. Or my whole thing that I do is about building community. You know, my Instagram is not really monetized. You know, there are a lot of people who they make their living as a content creator, or they even get paid because they have big followings, which is so amazing. I use my account as a way to carry my community between cookbooks.
The moment you said Hersh's funeral, tears sprung to your eyes.
Yeah.
Is that where?
I mean, I know
that?
Rachel and John. We're not close friends, but we are friends. And, you know, I think that Hersh and Rachel and John have been a real symbol, especially for American Jews. And I would say even myself living in Israel, their story was a story that humanized what was happening for a lot of people, including myself. And, you know, just being able to share their grief and with tens of thousands of other people, you know, of course, it's been said before, but like, it felt like we were being comforted by them as much as everyone was trying to comfort them.
You know, this phrase recipe development.
Yeah.
It's a phrase I hear, you know, you chefs use all the time. What does that really mean?
Every ingredient and technique is like a line of code in a recipe. Like I know at this point that if I take an onion and cut it with a certain type of onion with a certain knife to a certain size and cook it in a certain skillet with certain oil, a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, it's going to yield a certain result. And that's like a line of code. And I have thousands of those at this point, but it's how I vary the program and how I mix and match everything. So I have a lot of like the base knowledge, but it's all about thinking about you, the end user, and like, how is this going to work for you?
Are you testing in real life scenarios? Like, oh, I'm making Shabbat tonight. There's this thing I've been wanting to think about. I'm going to try it out.
For sure. Especially if it's, you know, the Shabbat cookbook had all of these like really large format, overnight cooked cholents and chamins from different Jewish cultures. You know, one of the things I wanted to do in the Shabbat book was, you know, maybe if you're an Ashkenazi, Eastern European Jew, you're used to a cholent or a stew, that's one way, but there are dozens of versions of that in Israel. So I would make them all and serve them for sure and get reactions 100%.
What's a chamin?
Most people in Israel call cholent chamin. It's the more Mizrahi and Sephardic way of saying it. Also, dafina is the Moroccan specifically way of talking about those long cooked overnight stews for Shabbat. It right now is winter, you know, rainy season is chamin season in Israel. It's never going to be like snowy cold in most of Israel, but like the minute there's a weather forecast of rain on a Saturday, everyone's putting up their cholent on Friday. And seriously, sometimes you get the aroma on the street, like you're walking by and you see that, and of course everyone's posting them on social media.
Oh, of course.
It didn't happen if it doesn't show up on, you know, on your social feed.
Baby, we got a stew going. That leads me to a question that I wanted to ask, which is, you know, you're bringing so many different facets of Middle Eastern cuisine to life in all your books and all your recipes. How did you become so well versed in Yemenite and Iraqi and Moroccan and all this stuff?
It's like I put in the time. I first, you know, one of my first big assignments as a freelance writer was I wrote a book about Yemenite Jewish cooking for a gourmet magazine. And I spent every time I went to Israel several times that year, and I got hooked up with two sisters who sang in a Yemenite choir. And they taught me so much, all the spice blends, all the Sabbath breads, all the different things that they do. And that was really a window to me and like how I wanted to do this, especially I feel like when you're inserting yourself into someone else's culture, you need to respect it and to pay your respects, especially if you want to interpret it in your own way eventually or put little twists. You need to go to the roots and share the roots and acknowledge the provenance of the recipe.
Yes.
Whether it's Israeli or Palestinian or whatever the recipe is. And I really try to be careful with that in my books. It's not that I don't put my own twists on things. Sometimes I don't. If it's really traditional and that's the way it's supposed to be, I'll just leave it. But so, for Sababa and Shabbat, I went out and cooked with 15 to 20 people in their homes or in my home and had them tell me the stories and show me the techniques. And I record everything. I go over it many times. I'm like it's very important to me that I get it right for these people. And then if I make a change or an adaptation that's not their recipe, I usually ask permission from them. What do you think if I add X to this? Or do you mind if even a technique, sometimes, we all have our ways of making traditional recipes. And again, as that outsider, I might be like, I could save a lot of time by doing it this way. But you don't want someone to feel like you're giving, maybe that one technique is like really spiritually important to them because they can think of their mother having done that.
Right.
I don't know. So I always check and get permission before I do something like that really like alters the sort of essence of the recipe.
Exposure.
But also just living in Israel, it's an object lesson in multiculturalism. There are dozens of cultures that have made their home in Israel and their culinary traditions it's a true fusion cuisine,
Right.
Like if you go to a falafel stand, there are going to be condiments from like 5 different nations that are permanent fixtures on the stand. There's amba, which is an Iraqi Jewish thing that the Iraqi Jewish community learned when they went to India for business purposes. There's schug, which is Yemenite. There's, harissa usually, and that's Moroccan, and there's tahina. So it is really interesting. And I think a lot of times Israelis don't even necessarily think about it because it's just natural.
Right.
But, it used to be if you went to Israel, until about 2000, people would be like, I went to Israel. Israel was amazing, but the food was like, It was like there was great shawarma, falafel.
Right.
Like the local kind of street food traditional things, but the restaurant scene, it used to be that like the mark of a great chef was someone who could cook great food that was from outside of Israel. It showed that you were sophisticated. If you could cook French food
techniques,
or Italian food or Spanish food or even American food. And, as Israel sort of opened up and became a wealthier nation and people started traveling more and the internet happened and young chefs started going on those trips to work in Michelin restaurants around the world, I think this light bulb went off because they would get to a Michelin 3-star restaurant in France and see that all that the French chefs were doing was coaxing the best out of what was growing right around them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, wait a minute, I live in this place that has like the best produce in the world, this amazing sense of immediacy, of freshness. We have incredible olive oils. We have incredible cheeses. We have incredible wines now. And we have the advantage that a lot of other people don't have, which is this tapestry of so many cultures.
Who's got better produce, Israel or California?
It's really funny you ask that because I think one of the reasons I feel comfortable in Israel is because there's like a continuum between the way I was raised and the things that I see. Like growing up in Northern California, we had pomegranates, we had figs, we had we had citrus, we had there's shesek, which are loquats, which our neighbors had a loquat tree, and I just had a long period of decades of never seeing another shesek, and then I moved to Israel, and people treasured them during their short season, and I love that about Israel, and also about California. People get excited about produce.
Right. So we mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
You've co-authored many cookbooks. Mm-hmm. That's really, where you got your feet wet in terms of cookbook writing. Yeah. What makes you so good at helping others articulate their culinary voice?
I always say that if I didn't do what I do, I would love to be someone else's like executive assistant. Like I love to help other people like get their stuff done.
Wow.
I'm like very like detail oriented about that, and like I'm like a helper personality. I like to help other people shine, and I love to collaborate because I again, it's like staying in that place of learning. Like when you write a cookbook with someone else, like it's like you're being welcomed into their brain and their kitchen and their entire culinary universe, and that's such a privilege. I have like the technical cooking skills and the technical writing skills to help them do that. And I'm like a very collaborative personality. So I love doing things with other people.
You can 5 seconds on your Instagram, you can see it.
When I realized that cookbook co-authoring was a job, I was like, I could do this for a living. It's less risky because emotionally what you're doing is you're helping someone else, and then the day the book comes out, you get to move on and say bye-bye.
And they
it's
have to
their
go tour.
vision, and they have to stand up for what they believe in. They have to show their book, their thing. And I got to move on to the next one. And then when Sababa came out, all of a sudden the night before the book came out, I was like, oh shit, this is all mine. I'm gonna have to stand behind it, and that was like a big transitional moment for me in my professional life, like from becoming more the supporter to the person.
Was there something burning inside you to say about food or about yourself? You're like, I'm ready to express this.
I don't think I realized it until I was living in Israel, but I think that I realized that I had an opportunity to share a culture that I loved with the world, and I had an audience who was hungry for it, no pun intended. And also, through my work with Chrissy, I had become a little bit better known. I would wake up at her house where I lived for 3 months at a time when we wrote books, and I would have 500 new followers in one day or something because she had tagged me in a recipe or a picture. And, I met Chrissy and my husband in the same month, basically. It was a great month for blind dates, like fall 2014.
Wow.
And then I started spending more time here between my work with her. And so people were looking, and I was in the shook, and I was like, I'm going to start posting a lot about my life in Israel. And people stuck around, and they weren't just there to see Chrissy Teigen.
Right.
Also, because she's amazing, but
But you had very low churn, as we say.
Is that what they say?
Yes, like the audience stuck around for the new stuff,
around,
and they didn't.
High engagement, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I saw that I was onto something, and at the same time, around the same time, my agent encouraged me to write the book proposal that became Sababa. And the story flowed really naturally because it was each of my books is really kind of a memoir of that era of my life. Like Sababa is really the story of my absorption into Israeli culture through the lens of food in the shuk. Shabbat is, I've been there for a while. I want to deepen like that Venn diagram of my Israeli identity, my Jewish identity, my culinary identity, and like, how can I do it? And Shabbat just kept popping up because it's like a Jewish holiday that 80% of Israel celebrates every week, basically. And then Zariz happened, the war happened, and I was there just needing to cook and put food on the table and create this island of calm for myself and the people eating my food.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is Sababa the one that had 125 recipes?
Sababa and Shabbat, they both had well over 110, 120 with all the staples and all the different things.
To me, that sounds absolutely insane.
It's insane. Writing a cookbook
that's not regular for a cookbook. That's got to be way above average.
Most cookbooks worth their salt, again, no pun intended, have 100 recipes.
Okay.
Mine do. This book, Zariz, is like a little, you have a copy of it somewhere, don't you?
I do. Let's show everybody.
Yeah. So here's my new one. It's coming out April 28th.
Gorgeous, like all your books. It got that beautiful, like primary color and the beautiful plate, super bright and colorful.
I just want, the pictures are so important. And
who's thirsty?
Yeah.
We're big smoothie people in my house.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. When if you write a novel, it's a ton of work, but there's no visual element that I do about 14 days of photography for each book, and
That's say that
you do about 10 or 11 recipes a day. So like Sababa and Shabbat had like 125, 130 recipes. Sometimes you have reshoots, also shot portraits of people. We went outside, did different things.
Are you cooking all the things for the book?
Yeah.
Or you cook the ones that they photograph?
Me and my team, yeah. I do it. In the States, there's always a professional cook as well who's doing the food styling. But myself and Nurit, who is the visual stylist for the book, she's really my partner, and we do it together.
And how much?
And it's no fakery.
That's what I was going to ask. Like,
there's
how
no
much
glue.
is once
there's
you
no
finished
hairspray.
Are we like, now we have to zhuzh it for the photo?
Everybody eats everything. There's no.
And this is how it would be. You would present it at table.
Oh yeah, it's my job to plan the entire shoot, the order of the recipes, all the prep all the shopping. It's a huge amount of work.
It's enormous.
It's 3 days of work at least for each day of photography. So that's like 50 days. It's like 6-7 weeks of additional work just for the pictures.
You gotta be organized.
And you saw my house. It's a great kitchen, but it's not huge.
Yeah, no.
So you got to be very, but yeah, I love it.
And you do it all in your home?
We do it all at the house.
Come on.
All at the house.
For all 3 books?
Yeah. I was living in another place, the first book, but yeah.
Now, Zariz,
there are pictures of my family and my kitchen in there.
I feel like they were outdoors, right?
Yeah, we did some stuff on the deck.
You have a
That's
deck.
Our kitchen.
Look at that.
That's my family on the deck.
Gorgeous.
My dad and my stepmom made Aliyah 4 years ago.
That's
They
fun.
live in Jerusalem. My husband's sister lives in Israel and her kids and grandkids. So we have a lot of family in the area. Do you cook a lot?
No. I'm sad to say.
Your wife?
Don't. Medium.
You guys are like, you're busy.
We're so busy.
You've got
It's
a lot
the
going
busy
on.
thing.
You're in the assembly phase.
We're in the assembly phase.
That's a good phase.
Where my wife, when she does cook, which it's not, I don't want to make it sound like she never cooked. Weekly shout out to Courtney, but I
loved your episode with her.
Thank you.
I just watched it. It was so good.
She's pretty badass.
Amazing.
She's amazing. But like she's got her things that she knows how to execute, and she's like, at least I'm making a home cooked meal that's going to be delicious that my kids and my husband are going to enjoy, which is wonderful, and we're grateful. Although we did do burgers the other night, which she doesn't usually do. She was like mixing it up
and I'm
for
sure
us.
They were great.
Delicious.
My mom always said there are no mistakes in cooking. There are only happy accidents.
Mm-hmm. Shabbat, your second book.
Yeah.
Instant bestseller. Were you expecting
New York
that?
Times bestseller.
Excuse me. Instant New York Times bestseller.
That was a big deal.
Were you?
No, I was not. I mean, it's kind of one of those brass rings of your career that you hope for, but never count on.
Did it change anything for you hitting that plateau of now I'm a New York Times bestseller, so these doors opened, or this level up situation?
It's like an authentic blue check.
Yeah.
It can't be bought.
Yeah.
It's just, it's something that's based on sales. So it shows that people went out and supported the book with and I always feel like it's such a privilege that people spend their cold hard cash on my books. That's the, Instagram, internet recipes are usually free.
Sure.
And, and the fact that that's why I feel such a responsibility. And I felt like it was the validation of all the work that I do and the fact that people are spending money on these books like that,
Well, how do you navigate that too? Like what recipes do you give away on your Instagram and in an article?
They're separate. I mean, my books are almost 100% original recipes. And that's like another commitment that I have because some people, content creators, some of the recipes in their books come from their social platform, and that's fine too. But I tend to do different types of recipes on Instagram that I do in my books. Like I said, like these forever recipes in my books, and Instagram are a little quicker, a little more fun necessarily.
More holiday focused.
Yeah, a little more timely and calendar focused, and maybe trend focused. Although I'm not the person who's hopping on every Instagram trend and doing that. There are people who are way better than that. At that than I am.
A lot of this book was sort of a love letter to your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Who died of cancer in 2006.
She did. And I just want to say that today is my mother's birthday.
Wow.
Happy birthday, Steffi.
Happy
February
birthday,
12th.
Steffi.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to celebrate her today.
May her memory be a blessing.
Amen. We just, about 3 weeks ago, we brought my mother to Israel and buried her in Israel.
Wow.
And now she's going to be there. And when my dad is there, my stepmom. And so that's like a real sense of completion and closure for me. I'm so happy about it. And yeah, she was a huge influence. And, when I set out to write the Shabbat cookbook, I thought, okay, I'm going to go cook with all these different people and different cultures and other families. And then I was having trouble getting started. And I realized that I needed to mind my own story first and go back. And the whole introduction to the book is a meditation on my own childhood Shabbat dinners and the kind of home that I was raised in and the type of hospitality that I was taught. And, understanding that there was always extra space at the table. I grew up in a place where there weren't a lot of affiliated Orthodox Jews, and we were one of the few kosher homes in town. So anyone who came through would come by our table.
Cool.
So it would be Nobel Prize winners and basically unhoused people. It could be anyone who needed a place for dinner was like at our table. And my mother always said, what can we bring for dinner? She would just say, good conversation. And, so people came and were expected to show up and talk and bring something of themselves to the meal. And I think that made people feel like they had a part in it.
I'm going to borrow that. I like that.
It's really nice. And she always said that hospitality is the secret ingredient in Shabbat cooking. And, that was definitely something that I try to carry on. And I think it infuses the book and the vibe of the book, and also just what I think is really important about Shabbat, which is being with your friends and family, maybe putting your devices away, focusing on quality time over delicious food, and, and creating your own rituals.
That's what it's all about.
No matter how religious or not,
Right.
I'm not Orthodox anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not like Shabbat is any less important to me or meaningful,
Yeah. We talk about that all the time on this program.
Yeah.
What makes a dish right for Shabbat and not necessarily for something else? Like what ends up in the Shabbat cookbook that doesn't go in another show?
It should be something that isn't overtaxing. Friday should be a time where you're not stressed about getting ready, in theory, where it's something that you could put together in advance and heat up or serve room temperature. I always tell people who are overwhelmed by cooking or entertaining, like, just make less. It's okay. Like make a one skillet meal that has like the protein and a starch, and then make a salad. Like it's okay. Like you don't need to have 18 things on the table. I do think that Shabbat lends itself to like large format things, because if you're having a crowd, so it could be like a huge side of fish with like beautiful vegetables around it, and like a salad and a grain, or like a big roast, or if you're vegetarian, like a huge plate of like gorgeous mushrooms, like in a broth, or, just something that I think also maybe has a little bit of like drama. Like when you bring it to the table and like present it, sort of like the weekly version of like the Thanksgiving turkey, but like much more simple. I think we're getting more savvy about how we cook and realizing that like it's not about overexertion. It's not what it's like signals love and attention to like your guests. If the host is relaxed and satisfied, then like it's going to come out in the cooking and also in the entertaining. Like you don't want to show up exhausted to your own dinner. Right. You deserve to enjoy it as well.
Okay, so speaking of ease with cooking, that's the perfect segue to dig in on Zariz a little bit. Oh yeah. There she is. What does Zariz mean? And why is that the direction you went in for the book?
Zariz means quick in Hebrew. And first of all my cookbooks to this point are a single word Hebrew.
Right.
Word.
Sababa, Shabbat, Zariz.
Right. And like it's hard to find the right Hebrew word that all Americans can pronounce because of our chaz and our huz and all of our sounds. So that was part of it. I just really like the word. It rolls off the tongue nicely. It really drives home the point of what's in the book, and it's an efficient word. It's short. It's 5 letters, but it says a lot and really like conveys what's inside. And I wanted every recipe to fit on one page. The book's a little bit thinner. There are 100 recipes, but every recipe fits on one page. There's a picture and a recipe. And also the text is airy. There are less than what I call a bat mitzvah of ingredients, 12 or less, or a lot of times 10, not including olive oil, salt and pepper, and lemon, which I think are kind of like such staples that like we have all got them.
It's in there.
So like I gave myself those, I set those up as challenges to myself, and it made the book more fun for me. It was like not a game, but like the idea that I needed to limit myself. So anytime I would be like, how would this be if I took out the cinnamon? Like I've already got the nutmeg, I've got maple, I've got this. So like, would it work without it? And, I did a lot of that tinkering. And, I think the idea is that you don't feel the effort that I made. You just get to enjoy the results.
A recipe I came across while I was looking through this. Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier. Your grandmother, who was not a big cook, Grandma Ann. But she's got a creamy corn and cod chowder in here, which looks great. Which comes first, the recipe or the story?
In that case, I think it was around Hanukkah time, and the only thing my grandma ever cooked was latkes and this corn soup that she made. And so I was probably like, I want to honor her. I want to make a soup. And also that's one of the few recipes that is like not very Israeli coded.
Right. Pretty American.
But I make that, and I'm American. I live in Israel and I love it. So I decided to put it in. I would say it came from her memory, and then I was like filling out the soup section of my book, and I was like, this is going to be delicious,
Nice.
And so, yeah.
And what does ease mean for you in this chapter of your life, not just in the kitchen, but overall?
Trying not to please others too much, being comfortable in my identity, both as a professional, as a cook, and as a Jewish person. I think trying to, calm, like have inner calm, have confidence about who I am, be less apologetic about it, and just try and live life and be in the present and do good things and have joy. and I get to share delicious moments with people. Like that's, it's worth it.
And who is this book for?
It's for all levels of cooks because the recipes are very clear and straightforward. But I think someone who has more experience cooking will appreciate the way that I created something simple that still like really delivers on flavor and impact. I think it's for people who like Middle Eastern flavors, Israeli flavors. The recipes are pretty healthy. There is a fried schnitzel on the cover, but
If you're a weekly follower of the show, thank you, by the way, I love you. You'll notice that we didn't pause for 5 deep questions like we usually do. And that's because we're not doing them this week. Instead, as soon as we wrap here, Adeena and I are heading over to my house to What Else? Cook.
Woo!
She's got a ludicrously delicious sounding twist on a holiday favorite. Happens to be right around the corner. I can't wait to try it. But the only way to find out what it is and maybe even cook it along with us is to join the Kehillah, our subscriber-only community, which you can do at beingjewishpodcast.com/community. Current Kehillah members, thank you, by the way. I love you. We won't be dropping the segment for another 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for it. Okay, so now, as I like to do, we're going to end our show with a little game.
Ooh.
And as I do with most of my culinary guests, we're going to play a little game that I call House It, Taste It, Toss It.
Ooh.
But this is the Adeena Sussman edition. So
okay.
Every situation I'm giving you are your recipes. And you're going to have to pick which of the 3 you want to house. That means, eat entirely, taste, or toss. Okay?
House, taste, or
toss.
So,
most of them are your recipes. We're going to start with a simple one. Let's start with cocktails. Negroni, martini, old-fashioned.
Negroni, house, old-fashioned, taste, martini, toss.
Okay, now we're going to you. Pomegranate, strawberry sumac smash, almondy vodka limonana.
House.
Hey.
I'm gonna filter them through the Zerise lens.
Okay.
And I'm gonna toss the limonana because it has a homemade almond syrup in it. Taste the strawberry sumac smash. It's so good. It so hits.
Ooh.
But the pomegranate is like
I love Negronis.
Yeah,
so.
I'm a big fan. So pomegranate.
You are also a latke savant, I would say. Like
latkes are my thing.
They are your
latkes
thing.
Are my thing. They go viral every year. My sheet pan latkes, all my
they look
flavors.
ridiculous. They look so good. So here we go. We're gonna take 3 toppings off the sheet pan latke board. Okay. You're gonna have to house it, taste it, toss it.
Okay.
Pear gorgonzola, avocado chili crisp, and labneh jam.
Labneh jam house, because it's the most Israeli, and like that's really the core of my cooking identity. Pear gorgonzola taste, avocado chili crisp toss, maybe because it's a little bit basic at this point.
More latke stuff. Parm and herb dusted latke tots.
Oh.
Latke fondue.
Ooh.
Latke smash burger.
Latke smash burger toss.
Okay.
Because it's kind of heavy. I'm thinking spring and summer now because of the berries.
Great.
Latke tots, if you have kids, that's such a house. And I put Parmesan and herbs in there. The fondue is also a house, but I mean, it's just the latke is the perfect vehicle for that stretchy, like melted, delicious cheese.
Our last of the latke list, our dessert latke.
Controversial.
I know. So s'mores latke, salted honey brown butter latke, churro latke with spicy chocolate dipping sauce.
The honey butter is the house.
It
it's
sounds
so
ridiculous.
simple. Think about that crunchy and the sweet and the savory, and it's like a brown butter, and there's tons of salt in there. The s'more latke I'm gonna toss, even though it was good. You
But
can just
just
make
doesn't
a
hold up
s'more.
to
I don't
the
know if
churro.
the latke and adds that much.
So you're
Churro
gonna taste the
latke is
churro
for
latke.
sure a taste or a house. It was good. It's surprising.
All right, let's go to Shavuot. We got
Ooh.
challah cheese Danish buns. We got lotus crusted lemon cheesecake bars. And we got crispy phyllo feta date bark.
Oh my God. I'm definitely housing the challah Danish.
But you're like a Danish lady,
I'm
right?
I'm such an old Jewish bubby in my soul.
Lotus crusted lemon cheesecake bar.
Taste.
Crispy phyllo feta date bark.
I would say toss because it was a trend recipe.
Churi brisket. Steffi's brisket. Fig and pomegranate brisket.
Obviously, Steffi's brisket is the house because it's her birthday today.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Shout out.
And it's just a class. It's the classic that your taste buds want before you even know it. The fig and pomegranate is a huge hit because it's so bright with the pomegranate, and it's gorgeous because it has these fresh fruits and figs on the top. It's definitely a taste or a house. And the churi brisket, it's great, but I mean, since I have to have a toss, I'm going to toss it.
See ya. All right, and we're going to end, of course, with some dessert. The gluten-free olive oil brownie bites.
Oh.
Ooey gooey shooky cookie. Or the brown butter tahini chocolate chip sesame crunch cookie.
Tahina cookie is the house.
That sounds ridiculous.
My name rhymes with Tahina, so it's kind of my Adeena Tahina.
Snap.
It's kind of my second Michael Salmanov, and I always just talk about Tahina and obsess about it. And
Shout out to Chef Mike.
He calls it the mother sauce of Israeli cooking, and he's so right. It's so versatile. It goes with everything. The ooey gooey shooky cookie is, I would say, a taste.
Gluten-free olive oil brownie bites.
I mean, they're a toss, but they're so good. Why are you making me choose among my children?
It's just the
Jonah,
game. It's not my fault.
It's not fair.
Kill your darlings. Adeena, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. It has been a delight.
It went by in a second, which is the
sure
sign
did.
of a great conversation. Thank you. It was so nice to be here.
Her new book, Zariz, it is available for pre-order right now. We will link to it in the show notes, so you got no excuse. And hey, if you're a listener of this show, why not check us out on YouTube? You can see our lovely faces and this fabulous set adorned with my awards and books from my former guests and the beautiful cover of Zariz, all the beautiful graphics, logos, and animation that my team works so hard to produce that really take the experience of this show to the next level. Give it a shot. You might like it. All right, that's all I got. I'll see you right back here for the next mouth-watering episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt.